What were you taught in school that you later learned was completely untrue? All of chemistry. About 3 times. Electrons are little balls that circle around the nucleus. Just kidding, electrons move in these little clouds around a nucleus. Just kidding, electrons move in these different hybrid clouds. Just kidding, electrons are clouds. Just kidding, fuck you. Also, light only moves in straight lines, except when it doesn't. Our gym teacher told us your body temperature increases by 40 degrees when you run. When we pointed out you go to the hospital a fever over 103, she told us it was different, and to stop acting smug. The sun is half star, half planet. I had a middle school teacher who told us that Buddhists have to pray to Buddha 3 times a day. Took me till high school before I realized he was probably thinking about Muslims. You can't take a bigger number away from a smaller number. In Of Mice and Men, Curly wore a leather glove filled with Vaseline. Our teacher told us it was so he could beat his wife with a softer hand. She was too embarrassed to tell us it was for intercourse. Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity by flying a kite with a key on it. People would offer me free drugs. In 7th grade health class we were learning about cancer. My teacher explained to the class that cancer can only be located on major organs. A few seconds after he said that I raised my hand and said my grandpa had surgery to get cancer in his knee removed. A knee isn't a major organ, is it? And this teacher thought for a minute and realized he was completely wrong and just responded with saying I'm not sure. Let's move on. Cracking your knuckles will give you arthritis. Men and women have a different number of ribs. Also some stuff about the Antichrist, but I didn't believe that. That everyone believed the world was flat up until Columbus proved them wrong. Everything about chemistry. In grade 9 we were introduced to chemistry. Then in the later grades they were like everything you were taught was essentially wrong, we did it to simplify things, here's how it actually is. Then in university they go lol everything you were taught in high school was wrong, it's actually like this. Looking back, I wasn't bad at chemistry, I always did well. But because of this constant flip-flopping I'm still confused about some of the basics, for example acids. That slaves were paid, just not very much. And they were given a choice between a penny and a dime, but chose the penny because it was bigger. As if that was somehow less racist. It's illegal to sell yo-yos at yard sales. That the ancient Romans has places called vomitoriums where they would go and gorge themselves on food and then vomit to make room for more. Gross, right? Kind of like that one scene in Catching Fire. Vomitoriums were actually a sort of hallway designed for spectators to exit the Colosseum and other arenas as efficiently as possible. That there wasn't any air combat during World War I, because the planes were only used for scouting. What about Red Baron? As a teacher I have a few rules for myself to avoid becoming one of these teachers. Always immediately admit you are wrong about something when you are. It's important for kids to know you're fallible, like everyone else on the planet, and that it's okay to be wrong about stuff every once in a while. Use discussion paired with internet searches to try to find what the correct answer actually is. I teach 2nd grade so we don't exactly have to go to Google Scholar, but we definitely go over the importance of checking over multiple sources and not believing everything we read on the internet. Teach kids that it's okay not to know something or have a misconception about something. The pursuit of truth is infinitely more important than knowing something outright. Although it's not embedded in our curriculum, I take time every day to explicitly teach critical thinking skills. That I wouldn't be paid to stare out the window all day. I'm a pilot. The food pyramid. Eat your carbs, kids. My 7th grade health teacher: black people can't swim. Their bones are much denser than ours. I've seen black kids jump into the pool, they just sink like rocks. Imagine my surprise upon moving away from Union, Indiana. You will need to write in cursive for the rest of your life. 3rd and 4th grade teachers. Blood is blue when it is inside your body. While silly Americans spent millions building a zero-gravity pen that could write in space, the Russians used pencils. Actually, NASA programs previously used pencils, but because of the substantial dangers that broken pencil tips and graphite dust pose to electronics in zero gravity, the flammable nature of wood present in pencils, and the inadequate quality documentation produced by non-permanent or smeared record-keeping, a better solution was needed. Russian cosmonauts used pencils, and greased pencils on plastic slates until also adopting a space pen in 1969 with a purchase of 100 units for use on all future missions. NASA never approached Paul Fisher, the inventor, to develop a pen, nor did Fisher receive any government funding for the pen's development. Fisher invented it independently and then, in 1965, asked NASA to try it. After extensive testing, NASA decided to use the pens in future Apollo missions. There are different sections of the tongue for salty, sweet, sour, and bitter taste buds. Because teachers convinced us you couldn't begin a sentence with, because, I believed it true. I might be a bit late to this thread, but back in 7th grade sex ed, my female teacher, and mother of 3, told us that girls cannot have an orgasm. Looking back, I honestly feel bad for the woman. How can you go through life and have 3 children of your own without ever knowing that you could have an orgasm? 1. Future employers will see how many detentions you have during school. There are 52 states in the USA. This was a mistake in a textbook, so this was thought to a whole generation of Austrians, probably also Germans. In a geography class, a student asked why the north of Ireland was part of the UK. The professor replied, because Ireland gave it to the British. Coming from a very patriotic Irish family, this was a shock to say the least. High school teachers told me how professors in college university don't help you with anything and you're completely on your own. After explaining difficulty I had with one of my papers to my professor, he gave me the names of about 56 authors he knows right on the subject and essentially gave me half my research. Another time, a professor actually loaned me a copy of a book the library was out of so I could photocopy a chapter I needed for my final paper. Most of my professors would answer questions over email or after class too. Professors help more than high school teachers in most cases. North is up, south is down, east is to your left, and west is to your right. My world cultures teacher wasn't the best. I knew it at the time, but my science teacher in 8th grade taught that the Big Bang Theory was the idea that the moon was formed by a collision between Earth and a Mars-sized asteroid. I told her this was not the case, and her excuse was that it was simplified so that everyone could understand it better. First year in college, the year was 2000. My intro to comp sci professor looked at me with 2 heads when I asked him if the exams were open book. His response, after the shocked pause, was something along the lines of, "Do you think you'll have access to the book when you go into the real world?" It was my time to mirror his look of shock as I had just completed my 2nd year of co-op employment through my trade school where I was employed as a DB admin and web developer and had not only books to reference but also Weschool.com bookmarked in IE6. In kindergarten, the teacher's aide told us that north is always forwards no matter which direction you are facing. During recess, I figured out which way north really was and told her. Her response was, only if you are facing that way. Edit, her first language is English. I think she thought that we were unable to understand north, south, east, west, and she got really mad at me when I proved her wrong. Until she was eventually fired a few years later, she tried to punish me with anything possible. For example, when I talked during lunch, she moved me to a different table. My junior year of high school, one of my teachers told the class that you can only get STDs from drug users and homosexuals. She also said that there are millions of baby angels in heaven looking for the right mommy and daddy to be born to. This was in 2012. The Vietnam War was a tie. Went to private Christian school. The one I always got was, when you're out there in college in the real world, you need to be firm in your faith. People will challenge you left and right. Professors might try to debate you and break you down, and other people will be bombarding your faith everywhere you go. Thanks for the scare tactics, but the most conflict I've had was with a classmate, and it went, "Oh, you're Christian? I was raised Catholic but I'm atheist now. What did you get for number 7? That you don't have any rights in school. Like, at all, no freedom of speech." This was in public school in the early 2000s. That if I did something that made the teacher mad, it would go on my permanent record. That we wouldn't have a calculator with us everywhere that we go. I before E except after C. Wikipedia is a terrible resource that is often inaccurate because literally anyone can instantly change literally any article. Wikipedia checks every edit within 24 hours, and they definitely screen new users somehow. I tried editing a small, backwater page once for shits and giggles and my edit never happened. More importantly, Wikipedia has stood up to every instance of cross-referencing that I've done, and I've written a decent number of research papers.